Of all the Egyptian kings that Herodotus talks about in his book, he describes Amesis as one who was the most, who made Egypt to be the most prosperous. Or here is how he says. He says that the reign of Amesis was the most prosperous time that Egypt ever saw. So it was Egyptians, up to the point where Herodotus went to Egypt, considered Amesis as the best king they had ever had. And this Amesis is the king who is in power when the Persians come to conquer Egypt. So after this, the next video I'm going to upload will be about the capture or the conquering of Egypt by the Persians. So, but Amesis was a very interesting character. He did not come from a family of distinction. Uh, he wasn't from the royal family. In fact, he was from a very low class kind of a family, and he was a petty thief when he was as a young man. He was a young man who liked having fun, drinking a lot, not working, and he will spend all his money on alcohol, and when he doesn't have money, he will go out and rob people to get money to go and have fun. And then he will be suspected many times to be a thief, and many people did arrest him and took him to the oracles. During that time, if somebody suspected you to have done a crime or to have committed a crime, the place they will take you to try to prove it is to the oracle. Then the oracle will talk to the gods and get a message that yes, this person is guilty, or they are not guilty, they are innocent. So many times Amesis was arrested and taken to the oracle, and some oracle will say he's guilty and he will be punished for whatever crime he had committed, stealing something, money or whatever from people. And some oracles will say he's innocent and he will be let go. Now that's a very important thing that happened when he was a young man, because that informed his policies when he became the king. And he took some steps against this, or the oracles, the temples where these oracles were serving, based on how they had judged him when he was a petty thief. And you'll be surprised, it's not how you think he acted upon these oracles. I will explain that later on. So, but before Amesis became the king, the person who was the king was a guy called Epris. Epris was the king. He was also kind of successful. He was engaged in some war, but seems like Egyptians didn't like him that much, or there's something maybe he did that made him not to be likable at some point. So how Amesis came to power is a very interesting story. Amesis was not close to anyone or any position that would put him close to being the king of Egypt. He was just an errand boy. In fact, he was a thief. Herodotus doesn't tell us the detail of his transformation from being a petty thief who got arrested here and there and drinking and having fun, and him becoming kind of like an errand in the palace. He became a guy who would be sent here and there to take message. He doesn't give us that detail how he moved from being a petty thief to being an errand or a messenger in the palace. But something happens while he worked for the king, King Epris. Epris had sent an army to attack Cyrene, which I think was a Greek town or a Greek city-state or a Greek. It was a Greek land, so he sent an army to attack Cyrene. But while these soldiers were either on the way or they were almost there or they were there, something like a rumor started moving around that Herodotus had sent them to Cyrene with the intention that they be killed, all of them, because he had seen them as a threat to his power. So they came to that conclusion as an army that Herodotus had sent us here to die because he doesn't want us back in Egypt. And they revolted. Now, Herodotus got wind of this. He got to know about this revolt, of course, he's the king. And he decided to send somebody to these soldiers and kind of pass a message to them, trying to explain to them now, like, look, I'm sending you out to fight for a kingdom. I'm not sending you out there to die so that I can benefit in any other way. So the person who is sent to go and take the message of the king to the soldiers is Amesis. So Amesis goes to where the soldiers were stationed, and he reached there and he tells them, this is what the king is saying. He tries to explain to them whatever the king wanted him to explain to the soldiers. And of course, maybe not really explaining, but handing over whatever message had been given to him to give to the soldiers. Now, as he was having conversations with these soldiers, somebody, one of the soldiers, did something like, it was kind of like a joke or something. He took an helmet and came behind him and put it on his head and said, now I've crowned you to be the king. And Amesis kind of liked it. And they told him, now you are the king. Maybe it started like a joke, you are the king and now you are going to lead us and whatever. And turns out Amesis was kind of like going along with this. So Herodotus heard about that again. And he sent another person by the name Patabemis. He sent Patabemis and told him, go and bring Amesis to me. The king intended to punish him because he had heard of those stories that somebody jokingly crowned him the king, and Amesis was kind of like happy with it. So Patabemis goes and he meets Amesis. Of course, Amesis is with the soldiers, and he tells him, the king wants me to take you with me to him. He wants to see you. And Amesis does an insulting gesture. I don't know what kind of gesture that was. Herodotus describes it as using his foot to do some insulting gesture. Maybe it was during that time there was some sign you do with your leg, and it was so insulting. And he tells Patabemis, please go take that to the king. Take that insult to the king. So the Patabemis goes back to Herodotus, and he tells Herodotus what had happened, how Amesis had behaved, and what Amesis had said. In fact, Patabemis didn't even get an opportunity to pass that message to the king. No, he didn't. The moment the king saw him come alone without Amesis, he was so angry, and he ordered the soldiers who were around to cut Patabemis' nose and ears. Now, that act alone contributed to Herodotus' fall, because the citizens heard about that and they were not happy about that. Even those who were behind Amesis for a very long time were like, no, this is too much. You can't do that. And it seems like the way Herodotus describes Patabemis, he was a respected member of society. And so the Egyptians were like, you can't do that to such a man. And even those who had stood behind a priest, they shifted their support, and they were like, now we are siding with the soldiers and we are not with you. So now the soldiers who had revolted were coming back to Egypt, and citizens and soldiers who were still around joined them to be against the king. Now the king was alone, but not alone really. He had an an army of hired mercenaries who were primarily Greek. So he took it. Herodotus tells us that they were about 30,000 men of Greek origin who he had hired to fight on his side. So these hired mercenaries went to war with Egyptian soldiers, and of course they were defeated. The number could not match the number of Egyptian soldiers, and then add that to the citizenry who were now against the king. So a priest fell. He wasn't killed though, at least not at the battlefield. He was captured. Initially, Amesis wanted to treat him like not to do anything harmful to him, but the citizens were so angry that Amesis had no other option that to give him up to the citizens who strangled him, and then he was buried as a king. Anyways, so Amesis becomes the king. That's how Amesis became the king. Now, while Egyptians loved Amesis, they did not respect him. They did not respect him. Initially, they didn't respect him. And the reason they didn't respect him, number one, he was, his background. He came from like a family that nobody really knew. It was not a family of high standing. So while they loved him, they did not see him as a king, although they just let him be there. But Amesis, as Herodotus described him, was a very cunning man. He was a very cunning man. And he played around with a few things to make the Egyptians to start respecting him as the king. And one of the things he did that Herodotus describes, he had this bowl made of gold that he used to wash his feet, and in fact anybody who visited his house would be would use it to wash their feet as well. And that bowl had been there for many years, and he had used it to wash his feet for many years. Now he took that bowl and used it to make an idol of a god, I think. And it was so well done and put at a public place, and people came to worship, and they really liked it. And then he told them, you see, that god now, I made it from a bowl that I used to wash my feet, and now that's like me. I was like at the bottom, but I have been converted to something better. So that's one of the ways he decided, or he chose to make the Egyptians start respecting him, start to see him as a king. Now, as a king, Amesis remembered the oracles who had judged him, or who had passed judgment on him, whether he was guilty or not, when he was a petty thief. And this is what he did. The oracles that found him guilty, he respected them. He went to their temple and gave them money, and contributed to the building of better structures for them, and gave them a lot of support. But the oracles that ruled that he was innocent, because he knew he wasn't innocent, but they were wrong into thinking that he was innocent, he had their temples shut down. And Amesis was very generous with temples. He gave them money, he built big temples, he contributed money even to temples that were outside of Egypt, those that were in Greek city-states, Greek islands, and wherever Greeks lived, because mostly the gods they worship were like similar to the ones the Egyptians worship. He contributed a lot of money to temples all over the place, in Egypt and outside Egypt. He also built very good relationships with other countries, between Egypt and other countries. And generally people felt he made the lives of Egyptians to be the best that they had ever had, for a very long time at least. And they saw him as a very successful king. Now, but he never abandoned some of his old habits. he still drank. He still liked parties and having fun. But this is what he used to do. Herodotus says that Amesis used to go to office, yes, of course, attend to his kingly functions, half the day, and then the rest of the day we just sit down with buddies and drink and joke and yeah. Now, to the extent that some of his friends were like, Amesis, you're not behaving like a king. That's not how a king behaves. You shouldn't be here drinking and joking with us. You should be sitting at all time at that kingly chair and we see you as the king. And Amesis replied, and I will read the exact statement that Herodotus quotes as Amesis says, bowmen bend their bows when they wish to shoot and brace them when the shooting is over. Were they kept always strong, they would break and fail the archer in time of need. So it is with men. If they give themselves constantly to serious work and never indulge a while in pastime or sport, they lose their senses and become mad or moody. And knowing this, I divide my life between pastime and business. So basically, he was saying it's not okay for a person to be just serious with work. You need to do work and then have time for fun. That was Amesis. So now, here is another irony about this guy. Amesis, of course, there are so many contradictions about his coming up and becoming the king, including him being a petty thief and becoming a king, including him being coming to punish the oracles that found him innocent and kind of support those that found him guilty whenever he was taken and charged for being a thief, and also for being like making his reign the most prosperous. He also did something else. Now this is now a major contradiction also about his character. He was a thief. That's how he lived as a young person, stealing from people all over the place. Now, as a king, he passed a law or established a law that required that once every year, Egyptian would appear at the office of a governor, their local governor. And each one was expected to demonstrate how they make their living. And if you failed to show that you make your living through honest means, then you will be put to death. And that became a law. And in fact, Herodotus tells us that Solon, who was the lawgiver of Athens, copied the law from the Egyptians and also had the same law in Athens that every year all citizens come out and everybody needs to tell, to show or demonstrate how they make their living. And if you fail to demonstrate that you make a living honestly, then you are put to death. Yeah, so that's Amesis, the guy a petty thief who became a king. A petty thief who liked having fun, who became king and continued having fun.